Okay, today we're going to, right on the heels of Config 2023, we're going to go through a quick beginner's guide to variables. I've already set up the screens and the components to save us some time. And also there is a playground file on the Figma website that you guys should download. And it'll probably give you a lot more in-depth information. But for now, we can do a quick sort of get to know variables and how they're used tutorial together. So we'll start with a shopping cart. That's the example they used at Config. So I've got my product tile. I've got my cart icon where I've got a notification button thing with the text for how many items are in the cart, and then one without it if there's 0 items. And then I've got my car with my image, price, and a ticker to add items to cart. And then I've got a message that says the item was added to the cart. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to add some color, but we're now going to do it using some variables. So if you click on the local variables, you can create a collection up here. I'm just going to leave it as variable collection for now. You can change this to theme, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a number. I'm going to call it spacing small, and I'm going to give it 10. You can see that I've got, we'll just get rid of that. It starts with without modes. We'll get into modes later. So spacing small 10. Then I'm going to create one. I'm going to call it spacing large. Set that to 40. Then I'm going to create a color, and I'm going to call it background. And we'll give it kind of like an off-white. And I'm going to create one for foreground. And we'll give it a just a not quite black. And then we're going to create one, and we're going to call it highlight. And I'm going to use the color that I've already used here. Okay, so this is good. So actually what we'll do here is we'll call this, oh no, we've already done that. So we'll just call this variables. Create a new collection. Go over here. We'll rename this one to theme. And now in variables, we're going to create a number called number of items in cart. And I'm going to create a Boolean called item added to cart. And we're going to just leave it there for now, because we'll get into a bit more after. But let's get our theme set up. So I haven't created a component out of this yet, because you can actually, you can actually create a variable with a string name and attach it to an instance that will switch between the instance I've got here. The caveat is once you create a component out of this, it becomes a nested instance, and it doesn't work on nested instances. So for now, you'll have to switch that manually. So we'll create a component. Okay, I'm going to get rid of these for now. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my fill. I'm going to click the style, and you can see I've got background, foreground, and highlight that we set up in our variables. So I'm going to choose background. And then here, for everything, I'm going to choose foreground. And this one, I'm going to switch it all to highlight. This one will pick foreground too. So there we go. So now everything's using our variable, which is great. Okay. We'll do that with all our stuff here. So basically what we've done is created design tokens. We'll leave the green, that's fine. I won't theme those ones just yet because I don't want to waste everyone's time. So the next thing we're going to do is we'll drop our product in there. Set it to fill. So it's looking good. We'll duplicate it. So we have 2. Okay, that's looking good. But now let's do something with this data. So we're like, okay, we've got car. We can fill this in normally. Or we can go to our variables, create a collection called product data. Now I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call it a string. Call it product name car. I'm going to create a variable number. I'm going to call it price. These will be cheap cars, $12.99. All right, pretty good so far. But now we've got this number. So let's create a variable called a number of items. And I think we can leave it there for now. Like I said, we can switch out the instance, but because it's a component and it's nested, we can't do that. We'll dive into that in a different tutorial. But for now, let's start with this. Okay. So the next thing we can do is we can click this plus button and add a second column. So this could be car, truck. We'll call this truck. Truck is $34.99. And now we've got 2 products. So we'll get out of that. We'll go into our component. Okay, we've got a car here. Go over to text. You'll see this little component icon. And now I can actually assign that from my product data to product name. Click on the price. Go over here, add my price. And then I'll click on my number of items. And I'll do the exact same thing. Pretty cool stuff. So now that's all linked to our data. And the important thing is you can come in here and at the very top level, you see these change variable mode. I can switch this one to truck. And it automatically switches all the data that we've mapped. And like I said, the only caveat is you have to go here and switch that one to truck. Pretty cool stuff. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go up here. And we're going to choose our text. And we are going to map it to number of items in cart. Remember we had that variable. And then because this one has 2 states, I've named them true and false. In my design, when I click on this element, I can actually go to that property, so we can toggle it, and there's a variable icon. So I can now map that to a true false. Now we don't want this one because this is part of our product. But what I can do is create a new variable, call it items in cart, True. Now it created a text variable, and that's not what we want. So, apologies for that. We'll actually go in here. Yeah, we'll just delete that. We'll add it in a Boolean. Pardon me. Items in cart. And now we should, because we've only got 2 and they're mapped to true and false, we should be able to select that one. There we go. False. Look at that. It hides. So I just want to make sure that aligns. So it automatically sets this based on the Boolean, which is pretty sweet. The other thing we can do here, we forgot to do, is in our padding, I can make this spacing large. And maybe I want to take these two, auto layout them. Apply variable, spacing small. Or we could do it to the whole thing even. Look at that. So now all our spacing is controlled in our variable, which is pretty cool. So how do we make this interactive? Now, we've got variables for our colors and our themes. We've got variables for our product info. And then we added one for added to cart and number of items in cart. So what we're going to do now is a little bit of prototyping. So I'm going to click on this plus button. I can go to prototype and add an interaction. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a variable. And I'm going to set my product data, number of items. So that's 0, that's right here. I'm going to set that to number of items itself plus 1. Okay. The next thing introduce, you can add more than one action per click. So now I'm going to set another variable. I'm going to set number of items in cart to the number of items in cart plus this number. Pretty easy stuff. And this will actually increment this. And then the next thing we're going to do is going to add a condition. If number of items in cart is greater than 0, set items in cart to true. That's all we're going to do for this one, for now. For the next one, we set our product number of items to number of items minus 1. then we are going to write a condition, because this will just decrease it. If you hit 0, it's just going to keep going into minus. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to not do that. We're going to set that to conditional. We're going to go if number of items is less than or equal to 0, set variable number of items to 0. Else, I'm going to set variable number of items to number of items minus 1. Perfect. And then what we're also going to do here is we're going to subtract it from our main number of items in the cart. So that means we're going to go one more conditional statement. It's going to be the exact same thing. So if let me think here, number of items is not equal to 0, then we are going to set variable number of items in cart to number of items in cart minus 1. This gets a little confusing, but it should work. So now if we run our prototype, which you can now run in preview mode, if I click on this, that increments, and that goes up by quite a lot, because I've done the math wrong. So this part works. Yeah, so apologies for that. You can click on these and actually get it. It's not, it'll actually be number of items plus let's be plus 1. And you're setting variable the number of items in the cart. You're setting the variable number of items in the cart to number of items in the cart plus 1. There. And then this one, yeah, if it's not equal to 0. So you just have to do this. I think we just have to move this condition above it. So let's try that again. There we go, 1, 2, 3. Look at that. That shows up. That counts down to 1, 0. And it doesn't go any further. So all we have to do now is add a condition to hide that. So that's pretty cool. And these will work independently from each other, but they will update all the same. So that's a quick introduction to variables. We can add some conditional logic now if we want. So the other thing we could do to make this really nice is we can add one of these. Oops. Just so we've got something in here. We can go on click conditional if number of items in cart is greater than 0, then navigate to, apologize, I have way too many things here. Products. I've named my layers terribly, I apologize. But you get the idea. Else, navigate to my empty screen. So now, if I click on this, there's no items in my cart. But if I add something, now I go to my full cart page. So it lets us design minimal screens with maximum interaction, which is pretty cool. And the one last thing we'll do, because we're getting high on time here, is we've got this message, right? So what I want to do here is I want to actually create a local variable. In my variables, I'm going to call it message, and we'll just leave it at string value for now. And I'm going to select the text and go over here, and I'm going to assign it to message. There you go, string value. All right, and now I don't know what's going on here. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my plus and prototype. I'm going to add one more thing, and I'm going to add one more action. So I can subtract all these. I'm going to add open overlay. Dig through all my crap. Message. And we'll move it in from the top center. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another one that says set variable message to product name add to string added to cart. I think I might have to put that in quotations. I haven't actually done this part before, so there, you have to put it in quotations. And then we'll actually move that above. All right. And then on this, I've got a prototype just set to after 15 milliseconds to close the overlay. So now, if this works, when we preview it and I add something, car added to cart, truck added to cart. So now we've got this sort of pretty cool little message that's based on what you added using your variables. We'll get a little more in depth with variables next time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for following along. It's pretty much my first time doing variables, but I wanted to get something out to you guys. Like, subscribe, check out the Patreon, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.